If you put a king in the circus doesn't look like a palace. The king looks like a clown. This is Epic Thoughts. Welcome. Happy Tuesday to all the people who are watching me on social media, watching on YouTube, watching on HBTV. Well, shout out to HBTV, man. Y'all doing big numbers. We appreciate y'all. And then all my new fam that's coming from Cross TV. God bless y'all. Welcome to another episode of Epic Thoughts. I am Rohmon. We are a week away. We are a week away from Election Day. We are 1 week away. All the talk, all the debates, all the stupid commercials. The commercials are stupid, y'all. Like, I'm over these commercials. It's finally the madness is coming to an end in a week. Actually, the madness is probably just getting started. I don't see a scenario where this is going to go kind. I don't see a peaceful balance of transfer of power. It's just not. Country, America, we're just not in a good place. And I'm kind of concerned for you. And so we're a week away. Ever more reason, I should say, to be praying for our country, to be praying for our leadership, to praying for God's will to be done, because this is nutty. I've gone on record to say that I think that this is a battle for against communism. I personally, let me just go on record. I've said this so many times. I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm kind of middle of the road. In the last couple of months, just in spending time with me and knowing how I think and processing information, I've actually kind of had some interesting stance that they're going to be my policies and my personal things, and they'll come into effect this election year. I will say that, because I'm going to vote based off of what I believe and what is important to me. So I am going to vote off of that. That makes certain parties nervous. I'm just going to say that out loud. It makes certain parties nervous. And if it makes certain parties nervous, and if you have an idea which party gets nervous from me just saying that, that's a big sign which side is the communist group. Because if you don't see it, it's very in your face. Interesting thing happened this week that I just want to share a little bit about. To add to my fight against communism, and that's not what this podcast is going to be, but we are in an election year. We're during election time. We got a lot of stuff happening here. So there's things I just want to make sure I want to get off my chest. There's so many talking heads and people making statements about certain matters and certain subjects. There's just some couple things I just want to share. One thing is crazy. If you haven't known, because I didn't know until like I had to do some not researching, but like someone had to tell me that Donald Trump was on JRE this weekend. Do you know that Donald Trump was on JRE? No, that's what I'm saying. Like, Donald Trump sneezes and mainstream media makes sure we know about it. If he farts in his food, they make sure we know about it. And like, if you really, really are interested and curious about where socialism or communism comes from, you can do some really classic reading. There's a lot of information out there. Just look up the history and how like Nazi Germany started, and how it starts with like squeezing information away from the people. And I'm not saying that this was a great podcast or anything like that. I found it very coincidental that we had this situation come up where Donald Trump is on Joe Rogan podcast and they release it, and it just I don't think it's like Joe Rogan conspiracy theory, but the day he released it, we have a big World Series between Dodgers and Yankees, right? All of a sudden, all the information, think about it. Baseball we ain't talked about baseball all year long. All year long. Baseball is one of the most people the most not despise sport, but it's the sport that nobody really cares about. Like I personally love it. I personally love baseball. I love watching the game. I go to games. I'm not really fun with my team right now, but I'll go to the games. I like the day games. I like going to the day games in the summer and just sitting out there and watching baseball. It's like the best feeling. I like being out there. Angel Stadium on a September evening is so good. I love June gloom on a Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday evening, going to the Angels game and watching them get their brains beat out by Baltimore. That stuff is fun to me. Like I enjoy that. But it's a baseball is an acquired taste. Baseball is a sport where, you know, baseball is a sport where you have to love the sport, right? If you don't like the sport, then the game is very boring and it doesn't get national attention until you get to playoffs and World Series and stuff like that. And even then, you got to be like a high profile team to get a lot of, covering. And so it's coincidental, and I think it is coincidental, Dodgers, Yankees, which are the two of the most prolific teams in baseball history, are in the World Series against each other, Dodgers and Yankees. Now you got these two major cities, these two big boys, big monster, giant teams with so much history between the two. They're the two together. I can't think of any other baseball team in Major League Baseball that has the history of the Dodgers and Yankees individually. So you're taking two of the biggest teams in baseball history, baseball franchise. There's not a franchise I couldn't even compare it to. And now they're in this clash for our October Classic. They're playing the World Series, and right now they're in. Tonight is Game 4. It actually might end tonight. The game started not too long ago, and by the time this airs or this ends, we might actually have a champion because the Dodgers are up 3-0. Well, that's huge. But again, baseball hasn't been talked about a lot this year, and a lot of people still find baseball extremely boring. So, of course, they're not going to share like anything that's going to affect, hopefully, keep it out of the eyesight because we are a week away from the election. This is a big deal. We're a week away. So I find it very curious that 10 days before the election, Donald Trump, which is a very strategic move, in my opinion, to get on Joe Rogan podcast. And, Joe Rogan is when I tell you he's loved, like he's loved. Like some people hate him because they think he's misogynist, and that's their issue. That's not Joe's problem. And I've always felt that about people in general. Whenever he's a such and such, and he's a such as, that's really your issue. That's not that person you're talking about issue. So for Donald Trump to get on Joe Rogan, this is a big deal. And apparently the podcast, if you haven't listened to it, is 3 hours long. So a 3-hour podcast. Within the first 12 hours, I think it hit somewhere like 7 million people. And as of today, just YouTube alone, it's 40 million. 40 million views. It's one of the fastest growing videos on YouTube. 40 million views and counting. And we are only 4 days in, right? Something that takes that much effect on like wildfire. I think they even have counted for another 100 million listens on Spotify. The numbers like that are so crazy to not get any mainstream attention. That's a big deal. That's something to look at, especially going into election. Why do they not want us to see it? Like if I'm in between, and there's some policies I'm still in between because in California, I'm voting over California. We can vote for a president. We do, but most importantly, we're voting on props, and we're probably voting on like governors and Senate and stuff like that because the presidents normally before our poll closes, they kind of got an idea who's going. And California just is a blue state. It just goes blue every year. Every year we have an election. Every 4 years we go blue, and it makes no sense. The red voters always leave California because they hate the way it so it always goes blue. So our votes really don't matter on president. We kind of know where it's going to go. It's gone red before in my lifetime, I believe. I believe it went red for Reagan first term, but it hasn't been red since. Um, so so this is a big deal. This is a big freaking deal, um, because you get a platform where it's not political, because the people who really like Trump aren't really political people. They're people who are like, "Hey, listen, I need milk to get down below $3 again. I need." And listen, if you the scary thing about this conversation was, if you listen to it, he actually shares his game plan on why the inflation is high and how to bring it down. And it's very practical, and it's not interrupted by, don't you grab women? Like, you know how people on TV, they don't let him talk, right? That's the problem I have. Like, let the man talk and let him hang himself, right? Did he weave? He weaved a lot because he's a candidate, you know what I'm saying? And he's probably used to everyone always having a question, but they got the other one back here, and I'm gonna sock you up with this one. And so he was, so for the first couple, for the first hour, he was not answering questions. He was just kind of like, because I feel like politicians, they always got kind of, it's a game to them. Like you ask them a question, they're looking for where the angle's coming from. And so he did that for like the first hour. And then eventually he started just being a bro, and they just started talking. And it was an interesting conversation, but he brings up so many facts. They talk about aliens, they talk about the inflation, they talk about UFC, they talk about Elon Musk, they talk about this election, all kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where if I was a campaign manager, I would put, if let's say I was Kamala Harris's campaign manager, I'd push, you got to get on this podcast like today. You got to get up there, and you got not refute, but you got to let the people see who you are. Because here's my take. Here's my thing on Kamala right now. Kamala is all over the place, right? And I don't like a person who's all over the place. You remember that person in high school that when they with you, they're like you, and then you see them over with the cheerleaders and they're gossiping like cheerleaders, and then you see them over with the metalheads, and then all of a sudden they like rock music, and then they're with the car people and they know everything about cars. That's Kamala to me. I don't feel like she takes stands on anything, because like just a couple weeks ago, somebody screams Jesus is Lord at one of her campaign rallies, and she goes, "You're at the wrong rally, ha 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 ha," and then 2 days later goes to church and preaches. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like that's not cool. Like stuff like that. If, as a campaign manager, I'd be like, bruh, you can't be like that. That to me, I don't know. Now listen, I don't trust neither one of them. To be honest with you, I've said that hundreds of times. I don't trust neither one of them. But getting on Joe Rogan is a move, bro. And before Joe Rogan, he was on Theo Vaughn. That's a move. Be on Andrew Schultz. That's a move. To be on those podcasts. Now, I've heard some rumors that Kamala might go on Uncle Shay. That's a move, but you're already engaging a group that generally already likes you. You know what I'm saying? Like Joe Rogan, if there's people on the fence, they're Joe Rogan people, right? Um, and I've heard too that there's been conversation that Joe Rogan wants to get Kamala over to Joe Rogan, but there hasn't been talks. There hasn't been a formal shutdown, and there hasn't been conversation about it yet. But I mean, it'd be a smart move to do. But I just find it interesting that in the midst of this polarizing election, that if you are in the media, you can see where the slant is. You can see where the media wants to. And this is the other reason why I'm kind of like standing here like looking crazy, because when the general public wants me to do one thing, it makes me nervous. And that communism does that. It pressures everybody to make one unified choice. And it's like we give into the unified choice. What are we opening the door for? What are we allowing by falling into this unilateral unified choice? And I feel like that's what mainstream media is doing. That's what Hollywood is doing. They're all kind of putting pressure on people to make unilateral decisions. Um, this is just my thing, and I might get canceled. Well, who cares? I mean, if I get canceled, I'm just gonna come right back. But when it came to social issues, I don't think any president really cares about the social issues. I think they're using it as fodder to get us to vote for them, right? Because again, Trump didn't stop no abortions. I mean, he didn't overturn Roe versus Wade. They're like that was the Supreme Court did that. And did he put people in there? Yeah, but it went 6-3. The vote went 6-3. And there's more Democrats in the Supreme Court than there are Republicans. And the Supreme Court didn't overrule it because they don't want people to get abortions. They overruled it because there was wording that made it unconstitutional. And so based on the merit of the Constitution, they had to make that vote. Okay. So nobody really stopped anything, but it's fodder now. Now it's fodder because it happened while Trump was in office. And then you got people like, you put such and such in there, they're going to kill all the babies. If you put this person in there, they're going to stop you from killing the baby or having abortions. And we're going to call that health care. He's against female health. But the truth be told, neither one of them care about it. Neither one of them is going to touch it. Even when they get into office, neither one of them is going to touch it. How do you know, bro? Because they both been in office and neither one of them touched it. Trump literally left it to the states. Like, y'all got to work that out. That means he don't care. Like, that's not his thing. But he'll use it because he knows that people who vote for him generally are pro-life. Kamala will use it because she knows people that vote for her generally are pro-choice. So she's going to push that the other guy's trying to take away the choice, and he's going to push that the other girl is going to destroy the family. But if you really look at it from a social standpoint, neither one of them care. Right? I saw a commercial that was on can I just say this? The campaign, if I can pick a winner for campaign ads, Trump's campaign ads kill me. They make me laugh so hard because they don't have to make anything up. They literally just play something she says. And they're like, yeah, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message. It's hilarious. The things that they've nailed her with. Um, they're not making it up. That's the funny thing. They're not making it up. They just take statements that she says, put it on TV. And so, but they use social commentary. They use social ideas to drive and win votes. But you got to stand back and go, have they really, really done? Like, they both been in office, given President Harris, Vice President Harris, I'll call her. Vice President Harris hasn't been the president yet, but we know what her responsibility was as vice president. And neither one of them in the office are doing the things that the media is telling them that they're going to do or say that they're going to do to the other side. So, like, we still had men dressing up as women and competing in women's sports when Trump was in office. So it's not like he shut that down either. So my thing is, they're using social ideology, which is socialism, to push an agenda for us to give up rights or to give up things or to vote their way or go their way or give them our rights. That's the definition of socialism. There's another thing that they're after that they're not telling us about. And I honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's the same thing. I think they both want the same thing. They both want power. They both want influence because of something else that's going to benefit them and their people. And I think they're both on the same. I think they both want the same. But at the same time, there is other elements to it. There are Democratic policies. There are Republican policies. I think before you vote off a social commentary, dig deep into policies, because that's really big. What are the policies? And then let's take another step further. Look into policies in your community. Look at policies in your state, in your city, Look at the council members in your state and your city. What are they voting for? What are they standing behind? What do they do with their money? What do they do with our money? Those are things that, and look at your propositions. I am a stickler of local. I always vote locally. I vote nationally too, but I'm more because being in California, which is a blue state, I pay a lot more attention to my local elections and my propositions. I pay a lot more attention to that than I do the presidency because, like I said, California, in the electoral college world, which I realize we're so undereducated when it comes to how the electoral college is done in this country. We are so uneducated about it. It's sad. It breaks my heart that grown Americans don't know how the electoral college works. They literally taught us this in senior in high school. Maybe you were disconnected. Maybe you didn't care. Maybe you're trying to get a prom date. They literally taught us how the electoral college works. And I remember when they showed us the electoral college, I remember thinking in high school, this can't be right. this this can't be real. This is how we pick our president. And so when I hear grown up, or even when I hear anybody over the age of 20 go, well, blah blah blah, uh, the majority vote always went to like Hillary. Like, dude, it's the electoral college that picks the president. Like, do we not get that? Did you not remember that from that it's popular vote, not popular vote for president? We go off of the electoral college, and you need 270 votes in the electoral college, and Hillary didn't get it. Trump got it. You know what I'm saying? That's why it was very important when we were looking at states like Nevada and Arizona. Like, it took them forever to turn in their votes. And then, going into it in the live recordings, Nevada was red, Arizona was red. And then we woke up the next morning, they were blue. And then we woke up the next morning, like, we don't know. We still getting in. Those are very important reasons, not because of popular vote. Because here's the thing, the electoral college is made so that every vote is valued the same, not weighed the same, valued the same. Meaning it, because if we went just off a popular vote, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and I believe there's not necessarily Dallas, but like is it Pittsburgh? I think it's Pittsburgh or Chicago. They can vote one way, and that would be the popular vote. So it gives the electoral college gives the Nebraska votes weight. It gives the Wyoming votes because they're part of the country too. So you got to give other people their voice to be heard. And the electoral college was created so that because then if that was the case, then they don't have to go to Middle America. They don't have to go to Iowa. They don't have to go to Montana. They can just go to Los Angeles and just say Taylor Swift likes this person, and go to New York and say this person likes this person. Then they go to, Chicago. Michael Jordan liked this dude. And then everyone votes based off of that. And they would never pay attention to what's going on in Middle America. So the Electoral College was created so that every vote can be heard. And even though they're valued the same, they're weighted differently. And I don't have time to teach this. I'm not a government teacher, but it's simply brought up in government school, in government class. Senior year, you should have taken it if you went to school in America. Anyways, I don't know why I said all that. Oh, I said that because because of how the electoral college works, California, they're gonna do what they do. But there's some serious propositions on the ballot. There's a couple of council members in my county, Inland Empire area, San Bernardino County. There's some people that I need to get out of office. They just gotta go, especially when it comes to like education in San Bernardino County, because that affects my kids. There's some people over in other positions that do we need in Congress anymore? Those things matter. So, and I'm gonna tell you this and be completely honest with you. There was a stage during this time where I was like, bro, I'm out. Yeah, boy. I'm not getting part in this. I'm not voting. Just because how ugly this thing was getting. And it's still getting ugly. um, to take to make an assassination attempt on a man because you don't like his policies. Like, bro, this is America. Like, the best thing about America is you only have to stomach a person for like literally 4 years. Like, you only got to be president 4 years. There's countries that you are born and you die with the same prime minister. You're born and die with the same king or leader. Those jokers don't go. They don't leave nowhere. So the idea that we're going to fight and have these uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinners because we have to have a leader for 4 years. Boo-hoo, cry me a river, bro. Like, there's some presidents in my short-lived life that I was like, oh God, this is going to be horrible. And after 4 years, I was like, taxes sucked, but it was okay. And then there was presidents who were like, man, this is gonna be great. And then it wasn't great at all. It was like, dude, this stinks. You know what I'm saying? And so but I do believe that there's more at risk at this one. There is more at risk at this one, but I want to encourage you to get out there and let your voice be heard. No matter where you are in this country, you gotta get out there and you gotta vote. You got to. It's important. And then at the same time, vote and pray. Like, I'm not gonna tell you who to vote for. I'm not gonna abuse my platform. And I think anybody who abuses their platform to tell somebody who they should vote for is like, to endorse a candidate is so sickening in my stomach. It's sickening to my stomach when I hear certain celebrities endorse presidencies. Now, I'm just gonna say it, put it out there. I find it very interesting that the people who endorse one of the candidates all are also almost name for name on Diddy's list. Let's just put that there. We'll just get back to it later at a different time. You know, I'm not leading. I'm not trying to lean you. I'm just telling you these are the facts. One one person is a narcissistic tyrant. The other one is a narcissistic tyrant. So you got to choose which poison you're going to drink. But if you really pay attention, you can make the decision that works best for you. What's going on, man? What emails do we have we can share? What text messages do we have? So we've been running out of ideas to do a podcast, and we're trying to get some guests in here. But I am on my blankety blank, so I have not been working as hard as I should be working. Mental health is a real deal, man. I'm telling you. So I've asked people to send me some questions to ask on the podcast, and we're going to go through a couple of them right now and see. The first one is we talked about the politics, so I'm not going to talk about politics no more. Do I have to? Here's a question. Do I have to? I went into puberty. Do you hear that? Do I have to preach the gospel to every single person? Sometimes I feel that preaching the gospel drives more of a wedge between me and people I want to share, as opposed to just living my life out loud in front of them. People tell me that because I stay quiet about certain issues that I'm not a good Christian. Can you please explain and expand on this, please? Thank you. Wow. That's a good question. It's a great question, actually. Should we preach the gospel? I'm gonna answer that question with a word, with a statement said by Mother Teresa. And the statement is, preach the gospel at all times, and when you have to, use words. There's different ways to preach the gospel. People think, and I get what you're saying. Like, I always laugh at the person on the sidewalk screaming at me that I need to get saved. I'm always laughing at that person because I'm looking at them like, how you know I'm not saved? Like, how do you know? And then why are you yelling at me? Like, with preaching, when I go to church, I'm expecting to preach. When I'm going to Cheesecake Factory, I'm not expecting you to yell at me. And I still don't know how well that's received. And I still don't know if that changes does that transfer correctly to salvation? I'm not sure. So I'm not quite sure how it works. I do believe that I've seen people give their life to Jesus, or at least have conversation about Jesus when they look into somebody's life and they see how they live their life and they go, man, like I remember a conversation I had when I was in I was a young kid. I was about 20, I was in my early 20s, and I was working at a factory. And I was trying to I was on fire for Jesus, but I was trying to like be as holy as I could. And so my conversation had changed. I wasn't saying a lot of the stupid stuff I say when I'm with my homies. I wasn't making inappropriate jokes. When you get older, you make a lot more inappropriate jokes because that's just who you become, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't cuss. I didn't when I would go out to eat with my friends, they would get alcohol. I didn't touch alcohol at the time. Still don't really fool with alcohol, but I whatever. I didn't touch it at all. I was like 22. And so people my age, you know, and I was working at a warehouse. So people my age, they would always do that. And I had two conversations on two separate occasions with two different people. And the conversation both started the same. They said, "Yo, you don't talk like everybody else in this warehouse, do? Are you Christian?" And then my response is, "Yeah, why? Why, yes, I am." No, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a Christian." That's cool. So what is it? And then they'll ask me, "So what's Christian all about? What is it? What does it really mean?" Or they'll ask questions like, is it religion? What is it? Like, why do you not cuss? Or why don't you drink? Or and then it would always turn into these really deep rooted conversations that happen at work while I'm picking up boxes or I'm filling out shipping orders or whatever. And then the conversation normally goes like 2-3 days. Like they'll come and they'll ask another question. And remember, some when you're spreading the word of God, some people plant seeds, some water it, some reap a harvest. So I've always looked at it like, yo, I think I'm sowing seed or at least watering it at this point. Because I had these really deep connecting conversations with people just because they notice. And the scripture talks about by the fruits, you'll be recognized by your fruits. So they saw that the peace of God was over me. They saw that I had self-control, which is a fruit of the spirit. So don't sit here thinking I'm super smart with the scriptures. Listen, the Bible tells us in Corinthians that you can have the knowledge of the angels. You can speak with tongues of angels and of men. And you can have all the mysteries of the gospel. If you don't have the fruit of love, then you're nothing. You're absolutely nothing. So the fact that they saw that there was a level of self-control, which is a fruit of the spirit, they were like, let me talk to you a little bit about why. How did you get to that? You're 23, And then it moved over into my 30s when I was working. I literally was working at a place where they were hiring felons. Like if you got out of jail on Monday and you had a driver's license and you got out of jail Monday for a felony, you could come work at this place on Wednesday. That's how and people knew about this place. And I'm talking like hundreds of felons, of ex-felons and all kind of people who were down and out. So just the yard was like a real yard. Like there's times where I kind of looked and I was like, you're free. You don't have to, play dice on our break time. You know what I'm saying? Like literally like that. And I don't know how many conversations I had there. I even have friendships that last after I've left that job. People who I go to lunch with or I talk to, or I was telling the church a couple of weeks ago about one of my dear friends who ended up passing a few years ago. She ended up passing like 2 days after she gave birth to her son. She gave birth to her son, but before she gave birth to her son, she was hardcore, bro. She was into all kind of mess, and I met her at this job where they were letting the felons in, and we became friends. We kicked it. She needed help sometimes. I'd let her sleep on my couch. Like we became cool. Like she would call me like every other week, every other day. And we would chat on the phone, just laugh it up. And she knew I loved Jesus. She knew I loved God. She also liked that I was crazy. So we would have laugh, then we have deep conversation, then we laugh, and then deep conversation. And she would like, there's times where stuff would go down, and I put her on my couch or whatever, and then even after I left the job, we were still friends. I called, check on her, how you doing, yada yada. There was times I took her to Applebee's because that was her favorite restaurant. And I wasn't trying to date her or anything like that. I was just being a friend. I was just being a friend. She invited me to her baby shower. I met the baby daddy. We became friends. It was fun. She told her mom about me one day, and before all this went down, she called me up one Sunday, or it was like a Monday or something like that, and she was like, "Yo, you're the first person I gotta tell you this. I gotta tell you." I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Man, you're not gonna believe this. I gave my life to Jesus." I was like, "What?" So I was in a church service and they were preaching, and I gave my life to Jesus. See, that's a perfect example. I didn't reap the harvest. Someone else did. She was at church. She went there, and my relationship was watering a seed. I did my part. I believe that God's gonna look at me and be like, because of you, she's here with me. And I didn't have to preach to her. I had to preach at her. I just was me because she knew who I was, and she knew by my fruits who I represented, to the point where she got saved and she knew there was somebody's going to understand my decision completely, and that's Ro. And she called me, and she ended up dying 2 days after she gave birth to that son. It was almost like, I mean, it's like God knew your time is up. And so, to answer your question, I don't believe in the idea that that's the only way that preaching to unbelievers, especially people who don't know you. Like, it's hard, and I've done it because when I was in seminary, they made us do it. They would make us go out and they make us go out and try to soul win. I've never been strong in that area because I'm a relationship guy. So I like to build a relationship with you, find out who you are, what you're like, what you're not like, and go that route. Um, so I've never been strong in that area. I could preach to a congregation that's expecting me to preach. How about that? I'm not good. You give me a mic on a street corner, I'm not gonna be able to do that. You want me to go witness to somebody? I can ask somebody for prayer, but it's just, you know, I think people have to be ready. And so I'm not that kind of a person to go get them. I can evangelize, but it's just it just looks different. So to answer your question, I think they both and. You can be both. You can be both, or should I say both or? I don't think Jesus is going to be disappointed because you don't pick up a microphone and start screaming at college kids. And I know, and I see the reels, and I read the comments of like the professors on or the pastors on college campuses battling kids. Like, you won't see me do that. There's better things I could do with my time, right? I'm not gonna sit there and battle a 19-year-old. They just got here, right? And they think they know everything, right? That's why he wasn't gonna say something, but I'm not gonna sit there and battle. Like, that's debating. I'm not gonna debate the truth. If you don't want to hear it, I'm not gonna give it to you. So that's one. Give me another one. Give me another question. Ooh, how do you deal with lust? I've been battling lust my whole adult life. Started when I was 12. Well, you were an adult at 12. I saw something online, and it's been staying with me now. I'm afraid to bring this into my marriage and later on to running a family. I love God. I fear God, but I can't shake this. Please help. Lust is horrible. Lust is bad. Lust will have you desiring something that's unattainable. And then you'll be doing things to quench a thirst that can't be quenched. That's the biggest issue of lust, is that it can't be quenched, right? It just wants more and more and more and more and more. And you think you shut it off by doing whatever you do to quench it at that moment. And then the hunger just gets worse, right? I remember being at a men's conference, and one of my homies was with me, and he was like, he battles lust. And a lot of men do. A lot of men battle it for a long time. Some men battle in seasons. Like me, I didn't battle it until I was like dang near 30. Because I had other battles. I had other things I was struggling with. So I really didn't think about lust until I was 30. And then it was ridiculous at that point because I was old. But I was working with this guy. He was dealing with it, and we went to a men's retreat. And then he responded to a statement that the speaker said that made me giggle, because he said, most men think that lust leaves when you get married. And he just shook his head. He goes, it does not leave. And the guy I was working with looked at me. He goes, "They don't leave when you get married." And I was like, "No, that joker stay with you. What you talking about? You gotta be really cautious." Now, listen, I want to tell you, if you're dealing with lust, there is grace for you. Um, Grace is in. I am a hard believer. I'm a hardcore believer in grace to the point where it can also be a fault probably. But I'm going to tell you that this is what I'm going to tell you about grace. Grace is God giving you time to deal with things, right? Because truth be told, He should destroy us all right now. Just period. He should. If you dealing with lust, like you're looking at God's children, because every girl is a daughter of God. So every time you look at something you shouldn't look online, every time you see a woman and you sexualize her in your head, that's God's daughter. We used to get scared. I used to get scared dating dudes that had like scary daughters. As a matter of fact, I'm still scared. I'm scared of my girl's dad. Like, because I feel like I don't do right, so he makes me nervous. So like, um, so you gotta be really really aggressive because lust is aggressive. It's an aggressive spirit. It's an aggressive battle. You gotta be aggressive to fight it off. You gotta be aggressive to battle it off. Um, how you do that? How you do that? Well, first things first, you gotta start living your life with limits. Like, just because we're free, just because you can do something, doesn't mean you should do it. Just because you can do it, don't mean you should. Right? I found it the hard way through social media. You and it- and this happened. Um, when a friend of mine decided that life wasn't working for her. So she decided to become an OF model. Um, and of course, she's a friend of mine, but she decides to become an OF model. She doesn't concur with me because why would she do that? Right. And this is not the first person that's done this. But this is probably the closest friend I've had. A lot of, like, when I was a youth pastor, a lot of the kids that were in my youth group, not the one I'm currently at now, but the young one before then years ago, a lot of those kids have become OF models, but they're not really close to me. When one of my friends who was close to me, like we close, became an OF model, and all her stuff changed on social media, I'm like talking to a OF model. And so when I started talking to the OF model, I was like, and then it it doesn't register that this is doing this to me because I never really processed that particular friend like that. And then what ended up happening was, because I'm talking to her and because I'm looking at her stuff, because I'm like, what is she doing? The algorithm goes, he likes da 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 da, more. And it got to the point where I was like, crap, it's everywhere. Like when I get to scrolling, when I get to doom scrolling, which you can't do. I was like, yo, this is destroying me. I can't keep looking at it. And I had to get to the point where this is how I deal with something. I expose it. So I have friends, I have really close friends, and I was like, yo, Instagram is sending me. I have a word for it. I won't share it here on this podcast because there may be sensitive ears. But there's a word that me and my homies throw around, like, yo, I blah blah blah. This many blah blah blahs hit me up today. And then it got to the point where, working in the industry, we do films, we do music videos. So we get actresses who are very attractive because that's their game, that's their brand. And so some of them are OnlyFans. And so it got to the point where, I'm following somebody because I work with them on a set, but they're an OF fan, they're an OF model. And so that changes everything because now I'm surrounded. I'm not surrounded by it, but mentally, if I scroll, I'll see them, and then we got involved with another side business, but that's another conversation we'll have another day. Shout out to Rice and Delora. And I think those are the only two. You guys are like He-Man, how He-Man had like two friends that knew his secret, Rice and Delora. And Beth knew my secret on the business that we did. That didn't do well, so we shut it down. Anyways, what's this thing? Lust. How I get rid of it. So I don't know. There's ways to conquer feeding lust. I think the best thing to do is you gotta starve it, right? You gotta starve it. And here's something that scripturally, and I'm trying to think of it where it's at in the Bible. But there's a story, it's in the Old Testament, where David should have been at war, right? But he didn't go to war. And because he didn't go to war, he's like chilling, and the women are doing their thing because the men are gone. They're at war. And that's where he runs into Bathsheba, who's sunbathing, and she's bathing naked on her rooftop. Well, yeah, she's not trying to entice King David. She thinks there's no men out there, so she's doing her thing. And because David wasn't doing what he's supposed to do, he got caught up. Most of the time, when lust takes over a man, it's because he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. If we are aggressively going after what God created us to do, we won't have the time to let it fester in our heart and sow seed. And if it sows seed and it sits, it's gonna jack you up. So that's one. So you got to have a plan to what is God calling you to do. Do that plan. Two, you have to expose it. You have to expose that joker. You got to let brothers in your world, in your fight. If you're married, you got to let your spouse in and let them know, hey, man, this is what I'm dealing with right now. I got Insta girls coming at me. Like, I need you to help me figure this thing out. We need to shake this thing. We can't let this thing rest anymore. On top of that, you gotta starve it. You can't go to the websites. You can't go to websites. You can't let the websites get you, right? You can't go to OFs. You can't go to PHs. You have to starve that stuff. And you gotta go to counseling. You gotta be you have to be preemptive, right? You have to aggressively go after that. You can't just expect it to go away on its own. And yeah, you could pray. I believe in prayer. I believe in fasting. But you got to make the right, proper decisions that doesn't destroy you around the world around you. So that's my response to that. Because it's a joker, bro, and it ruins marriages. It ruins relationships with daughters. Like, it gets really weird when you're a dad and you're a girl dad and your daughter starts developing. Because then it's like it becomes really weird, because then I know a lot of fathers who disconnect with their daughters because she's becoming a woman, and it sucks to them. No, it doesn't suck to them, but it's like it becomes awkward because they've let lust overwhelm them, and now they have a loved one that they have this fatherly love towards developing like a woman. And so, with that being said, they pull away. They side hug their daughters, and you gotta hug your daughters, man. Your daughters they love fatherhood. They love their dad's hugs. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful, and don't let that stuff get the best of you. I got time for one more. Do I have time for one more? I got one more. Okay. Man, I've been talking a lot today. This is a good episode. Hey, shout out, real quick. If you like the episode, leave a review. If you'd like listening to it, let us know. We need to get some energy, man. And follow us on Heritage Park on YouTube, so we can get more information out to you and get this thing going, man. Yeah, I'm just saying that. I'm having a hard time forgiving a friend that has betrayed my trust. I know what the Bible says about forgiving, and if I don't forgive them, I can't be forgiven. But what do you do when somebody has betrayed your trust to a complete level and you can't trust them again? Help me understand this. Whew, it's a good question. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your question. Let me just say this real quick. Just because the Bible says forgive doesn't mean you got to trust the person again. Right? Trust doesn't mean forgive. Forgive means you're releasing them of any kind of recompense or payback for what they've done to you. Okay, so don't forgiveness is not the same as getting trust back. With that being said, you gotta learn to let people go. You gotta let stuff go, not because Jesus will forgive you, but because you've experienced Jesus' forgiveness. I will go a step further and say you can't forgive if you haven't fully experienced God's forgiveness over you. There's things that God should not forgive me of, yet he does. So with that in mind, I have to forgive because of the goodness that the grace he has forgiven me with. There is a story in the Bible of a man who owed the king money that he couldn't repay. And he just put himself at the mercy of the king. I don't remember the numbers, please forgive me, but it was something he couldn't pay. In our vernacular, let's say it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. He couldn't pay it. And the king had every right to put him in jail for owing the debt or even taking his life. And the king forgave his debt. This is a parable in the scriptures. On his way away from the king, after leaving the king, after his debt had been pardoned, he runs into a person who owes him $200. And immediately went to the man who owed him money and demanded that the man give him his money back. When the man said he didn't have the money, there's no way he could pay him his $200. The man puts the guy who owes him $200 in jail. When the king hears about it, he viciously, angrily goes at the man. I'm like, I forgave you of a massive debt. You couldn't forgive this man of $200. That's where unforgiveness sits. That's how God sees it. He sees, I forgave you of a lot, bro. Like a lot. If I could combine the last two questions, you look at my daughter as really suspect, and I forgave you of that. So but you're telling me you can't forgive this person because they told your secret to a couple of friends because they blasted you on social media? Not saying that's not supposed to hurt, because people think that forgiveness makes it not hurt anymore. No, forgiveness doesn't mean it doesn't hurt anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean that that what they did is okay, because forgiveness does not make what they did all right. Forgiveness is they don't owe you an explanation. They don't owe you a replicate or a payback. They don't owe you anything for that. It's over and you're moving on with your life. As a matter of fact, forgiveness does more for you than it does for them. Unforgiveness is like you drinking poison hoping that I die. That's how toxic unforgiveness gets. So there's a major reason why the Lord doesn't want us holding it, because one, we can't hold unforgiveness. That's just out there. You can't do it. Two is it's God's job to forgive. God will forgive, but you got to be able to let it go so you can continue on with your life. Right? You got to go on with your life. You can't be sitting here holding on to unforgiveness because somebody made you mad or someone disrespected you. That's called life. If you live any amount of time in this life, your friends are going to be your enemies, and at some point your enemies are going to be your friends. That's just how it works. So we can't sit there and be like, yo, such and such did me wrong, I'll never forgive him. Who do you think you are? What kind of narcissist do you have to be to experience the grace of God, to receive forgiveness and not forgive your brother? So I'll take it a step further. You can't fully comprehend forgiveness if you can't forgive. You can't comprehend forgiveness. So that means your relationship with Jesus is that's why I think he makes the statement he makes, because he was like, if you can't forgive, you have no concept of what I've done. There's no concept. I forgive because Jesus has forgiven me. And sometimes you have to keep forgiving, right? Sometimes I have to sometimes my mind replays what people have done. And when that happens, I gotta let them go again. I gotta forgive. That's what Jesus would want us to do. Right? That's what he wants to do. Heritage Park PROD is the website. You get all the information you need for Heritage Park right there. All the way to the end of the year. We're giving away free books of the Hidden Agenda. You go to the store on heritageparkprod.com. You put the book in your cart and you type in agenda. All the way till December 31st of this year, we are giving it away for free. You just got to pay for the shipping. All right. Agenda in a coupon code. You get your copy free. Keep the questions coming because I love the questions. We keep talking about these all day. If you know my phone number, you could text me on my phone number, or you could just write us on the email, or there's comments everywhere now. You could comment on Spotify, you could comment on YouTube, and put your questions in, and we'll get to them, man. Um, but listen, a week from today, you gotta vote, and there's some states where you can vote already. Make your voice be heard, man. Your vote is valuable. Use it. All right. I think that's it for today. Shout out to my homie Rice. Shout out to the Heritage Park family. Shout out to all the loved ones who be there for me from thick and thin. All the people in the building. Thank you to the people who are watching and been listening, and thank you to Cross TV. You guys have been watching it. You've been killing it on the numbers, man. I was like, am I only there because because the podcast is not killing like it used to and YouTube, but Cross TV, they killing it over there. So I appreciate y'all. Anyways, I'll talk to you later. God bless. Peace.